All right, it says we are live. Awesome. See if I can get this thing open and we can get things underway. How's your day been, though?
Tired. Kind of we have well, she'll be 2 in August. And she gave us kind of a crazy night last night. She didn't want to sleep.
Oh, boy.
So I've been like falling asleep everywhere
Oh, man.
today. So yeah, tried to work a little.
Gotcha.
Unsuccessfully.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Is this the little one that you usually bring to conventions?
Yeah. That's just probably. What was the last one I saw you at? Trying to think.
Probably New York last year.
Yeah. She was like 6 weeks.
Yeah, dude, that's nuts, man.
Yeah,
Because you brought her the last 2 years, right?
No. I'm trying. No. Wait. Yeah. Her first one, she was 6 weeks.
Mm.
Yep. And then I just remember we brought her last year, this last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
A bit bigger.
Yeah, I guess we can kind of get this cooking. Well, for those of you watching now, I am super excited to be able to talk to our guest here, Jonathan Glapion, known for being the inker amongst a various number of titles and characters, including Spawn, Reborn, the New 52 Batman, currently the amazing Batman Last Night on Earth, Batgirl, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, man, the list goes on. So I think this is such a rare opportunity, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and just chatting your work.
Yeah, thanks for having
me. So obviously, I feel like any decent interview has to start off coming from your beginning, your origin into comics. So I'm really curious, for you, what got you into comics? What got you interested?
Well, I was kind of like a late bloomer. Like I didn't collect when I was like a little kid or anything. A friend of mine, I think I was trying to think of how old I was actually, maybe like 7th, 8th grade or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like right before high school. And a friend of mine was picking up books, and I kind of picked it up for the art. I no offense, but I could care less about reading them at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was always into art. Not necessarily into drawing comic art, but just art in general. And comics was, it's all fantasy and it's fascinating, it's dynamic. So got a hold of some Jim Lee stuff, Punisher, McFarlane. It's probably my gateway. The dynamic page designs and stuff like that kind of sucked me in.
Yeah, I feel like that's super fitting that you started on a lot of McFarlane stuff, considering your most notable partner in crime being Greg Capullo, also getting his start on Spawn, and you've inked Greg's Spawn, yeah?
No, just some covers I helped out on. I didn't do any of the Spawn stuff. That was like at the time when I was with McFarlane, that was like the holy grail. That Todd inked them, and then it was Danny. Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
So I was new starting out, so I wasn't gonna get to touch that stuff really.
Yeah. So you got into comics later in life. What made you want to start pursuing it as a career, and then kind of segueing into your present position in the industry?
Honestly, I never really pursued. I didn't go to any Comic Cons, any conventions like that. I didn't have any portfolio reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw a segment on TV on Entertainment Tonight of like how Spawn is made, and it showed Todd talking to Greg Capullo and how the process was, and that's when I realized that the artists didn't all live in the same space. They didn't have to be in the same studio. So that kind of sparked my interest. Just seeing the process kind of sparked my interest. And I went to a local comic book. I saw a flyer for a local comic book signing, and there was there was no penciler there, but it was the inker, like the art director for McFarlane, and a colorist. And I don't even think I had a computer at the time. So coloring was like, it wasn't an option. Maybe if there were a penciler there, I probably would have talked to the penciler. No slight to the inker.
Right.
But I was always drawing and painting and stuff. And I didn't know jack about design. So I figured the closest person I could talk to was to the pencil page was the inker.
Mhm.
And so I just went and I talked to Chance Wolf, stood in line, and I think I basically asked him what kind of nib he used, and that was it. That was the information that I got, and then I walked away. And then I hung around the comic shop, and he gave me his business card. He came up to me, gave me his business card, and he happened to live in the same complex I lived in.
Wow.
And he needed an assistant at the time. So I started assisting him, which is basically filling in blacks. And I did that for like a month. And then he started showing me like the nuances of inking, actual, like using the tools that he used. So that's that's how I got into the industry. It's kind of accidental, at the same time being prepared for the opportunity and willing to take it. And so that's just kind of how I pursued it, kind of weirdly.
I mean, yeah, and here you are now, honestly, one of the most versatile inkers in comics, you know? No, of course. I mean, your work is iconic, and I think honestly, for anybody watching that hasn't picked up Last Night, man, I mean, I don't know if you got a chance. I think I tagged you in it. I did a review of the book,
Mhm.
and the inking in this book, I think, might be the best I've ever seen from you. It is
Cool.
tremendous, man. Like
Oh, thank you.
the way that you textured this book, I think, is absolutely phenomenal. And I think, above all else, the page that really hit me was when Bruce wipes off Alfred's EMP mask, and you see how old he is, and
Mhm.
you can just see like the wear and tear on Alfred's
Yeah,
face.
yeah.
And I think that was one of the moments where you could see how, and of many in this book, where your inks really elevated Greg's pencils, because I don't think I would have felt that scene nearly as much if you hadn't done what you did there.
Awesome, awesome. Good. I know I'm doing my job then.
Yeah, that's absolutely
I live to ink another day.
Hey man, I feel like as long as anybody who's around that enjoys good comic book art, I'm sure you will certainly be around. But yeah, so my question for you is, approaching something like Last Night, especially in the Black Label line that's kind of hailed as a space for you creators to really go out there and do some of your biggest work. Did you approach this book in a particularly different type of way, or were you perhaps maybe a little bit more experimental in the way that you were texturing?
um, I don't know that I don't know that I sat down and really thought about approaching it in any different way. Every book I try to top that, I
Right.
guess, in a sense. Not really like you're trying to show off, but you're trying to constantly achieve the best that you can.
Absolutely.
So, with this, the upside to this being a little more time than the normal monthly grind.
Mhm.
With the normal routine of a monthly book, your limitations are always time and how much you have to spend on something to think about trying different things versus not necessarily playing it safe, but um, you have deadlines to meet.
Yeah.
So with this, I get a little bit more time to sort of, for example, if I finish a page, normally on a monthly grind, I'll finish my page and I want to shoot that page right to the colors to DC.
Mhm.
Um, this one, I kind of finished my page and I would send it in the next morning because I wanted to look at it again,
Right.
fresh eyes after working so many hours during the day.
Mhm.
So there was a big difference there. There were some. there's always some textural things that I want to try. I'm always buying different pens, different tools, different brushes. I've got about a million nibs. Um, so I'm always wanting to try something different, but not to the extreme of like shocking Greg or doing anything weird to the art.
Yeah.
But just constantly evolving, really.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting about inking is obviously, the first thing that people think of when they think of comic books are the writer and the penciler. But I think
Mhm.
that there's something very particular and nitty-gritty about what inks and colors provide that people look over. And when you really think about some stuff, and it's not particularly in Greg's case, but inks sometimes are what make the pencils. Because I know that sometimes with Greg's pencils, it seems like because of the relationship and the trust that he has in you, sometimes he'll just kind of mark areas and let you kind of do your thing.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I always struggle with like I've talked to people who've seen Greg's pencils, and they say, "Oh wow, I didn't realize it was that loose or whatever." But to me, they're not tight pencils,
Mhm.
but then they're not loose. Like I think Greg's pencils are confident, where um, just for an example, like there may be a certain texture where I've worked with some pencilers and they're like absolutely drawing out that texture. It might as well be etched in stone.
Okay.
Whereas Greg, it's almost he gives you the hint of where he's going with it.
Mhm.
Um, but then at the same time, I think there's an understanding of what he does with a pencil is a little bit different than what I do with a brush.
Mhm.
So there's different things that I can do with a brush that he doesn't have to do with a pencil. So then he gives me that kind of leeway or that freedom to create in that sense. As long as you're not, distorting the pencils, in my opinion, like taking
Right.
away too much from it just to sort of, you know, bring your own shine.
Mhm.
um, I think that's a cool collaboration to give that bit of freedom. Um,
Yeah. And it definitely displays a level of trust because I don't know, I don't think I'm in the minority on this, but I feel like you and Greg are kind of gonna go down as, the equivalents to like the Jim Lees and Scott Williams relationship, or even like the Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. Like you guys are very
but
much
that's a
tied to it.
pretty that's a pretty cool. I wouldn't have. It's funny. I've talked to people at shows and I've heard those comments at shows, and it's funny being in this spot because I was always like the new guy
Mhm.
looking what Greg and Todd were doing or Greg and Danny were doing. It never dawned on me that I would be here.
Mm.
I didn't think that, I knew that obviously I wanted to work my ass off and I knew that I was capable of doing things, but it was never, I was admiring, people's work. And admittedly, I think I had a pretty sweet advantage
Mhm.
living like 5 minutes from Todd's house,
Yeah.
and I took advantage of it. and,
There's no
and what
reason
I
not to.
mean by that is instead of being afraid of Todd or being shy around Todd, I was never afraid to talk to him and ask him or ask anyone at his house, hey, can I come over and look at pages? I wanted to see when I was starting out, the the problem that I had was in not I have to see things. You can explain to me over and over how something is supposed to work. I'll never really digest it or get it to work for me unless I see it.
Mm.
So for me, I had to see the quality of, and which is a lot of times when I talk to other like young inkers, I'll tell them to go look at original art, you know, and don't be afraid to be very particular,
Mm.
you know. Um, choose your diet well, I guess.
Yeah.
Because when I went to Todd's house, and I credit some of these guys because, you know, Todd's stable of guys like Kevin Conrad, Danny Mickey, Chance Wolf, they all did something different. Like when I came in with Chance, assisting with Chance, he was kind of like at the end of wanting to ink anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of burnt out in a way. Um, so there was only so much I was going to get there. But the cool thing about Chance that I wouldn't trade for the world was Chance wasn't an inker. He was just an artist. He painted the Spawn Mobile. A lot of people don't know.
Wow.
He painted the prototypes for Todd's Toys, the X-Files line.
Wow.
And this is an inker,
Yeah.
So I was an artist that came into comics, not even really trying to be in comics, but I just happened to meet another artist that was in comics, not an inker, Right. So I got lucky there. So I was able to hold on to that whole everything is art with Chance, learn that craft. And then I would go to Todd's house and I would, see pages just laying on the desk, one of the editor's desks, and I would just kind of peek. And that was the first time I saw original pages from someone other than what I saw with Chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they were Danny Mickey's pages, and I was just blown away by the craftsmanship on the page. Nothing was sloppy, even in areas where it didn't look necessarily controlled.
Right.
Um,
It was like,
it was very organic.
yeah, you could tell that the inker just had a handle on what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So from Danny, I learned that you could be adventurous in inking. Kevin Conrad was a technical freak.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a smudge on Kevin's pages. They were just so clean and pristine. And every line was executed so confidently you could see it just looked like a machine did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, that's insane. Like I don't see any mistakes or anything. So then I kept seeing like all these different bars to achieve. And then when I went to San Diego Comic-Con one year, I hunted down Scott Williams pages with the Scott Williams original inks, and I was just mesmerized. And then that's when it's like, oh, that's inking. These guys have crazy skill. But even then, I didn't know what the most important thing about most of these guys was that they could all draw.
Yeah.
Like every one of them could draw. So there's a lesson there.
Yeah. I mean, and what was really crazy for me is, my first exposure to you was Court of the Owls. And, that was the book. I just started reading comics, but that was the book that made me fall in love with comics. And I think it was, I don't know, I've been going to New York Comic-Con for about 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And I remember when I started following you and I started seeing some of your commissions, the thing that really blew me away, particularly with your art, is that it is so distinctly your own style. And that's something
weird for me to hear.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's awesome. And the thing is, like, Scott Williams, for example, he might be, potentially the most famous inker in comics right now, but his style, you could tell, is very heavily Jim Lee. And it makes sense, when you're drawing Jim Lee for between 20 and 30 years, it makes sense that your art will take.
Whereas Jim Lee very heavily Scott Williams.
You never know. I mean, maybe I'm making poor assumptions. But the thing I love about your art, and for those of that are joining us now, you can see I have 3 of his artist prints up there. your style is so unique and stylistic, and I love particularly like, and this in particular might come from your background in inking, is the way that you texture things.
Yeah.
Like, it's difficult to see here, but the metal on the bottom
Mhm.
of that Mr. Freeze, it like that kind of chrome, kind of shiny
Right.
look that you get to it is awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And with this past year at New York Comic Con, I don't know if I said anything when I bought it, but those three, I
Mhm.
kept telling myself if I only got one set of artwork at the convention, it was going to be those three prints.
Oh, nice, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I mean, it's awesome and it's unique, and you know, just tagging that on to what you were saying about, you know, the best inkers are the ones that have the ability to draw outside
Right.
of inking, and I think that very much proves, you know, what you were saying right there,
Yeah.
and for, you know, anyone that's watching, you can find the link to Jonathan's Twitter and his website below, and you can see his style and in his commissions and in his prints, because it's so cool. And I was wondering, do you particularly have any influences to the way that you approach your own commissions and your own personal art?
That's funny. So me and my wife, we go on a walk every morning, or she does. I try to. We go on these morning walks, and I think it was this morning. This morning, yeah, we were actually talking about this thing, um, and it's funny. I have a lot of, and I have a lot of influences, I guess, and it's kind of like all over the place. Like, I was always into Norman Rockwell. Like,
Mm,
I loved Norman Rockwell. I had books and books when I was in high school. That was the stuff when, most guys were reading comics or whatever. I was trying to find every Norman Rockwell painting ever made, in a book to look at and study. Um, so Rockwell, as far as like in comics, um, shit, there's guys whose work, man, it's funny, I have all of this advantage of having Greg's pencils.
right.
I see him, I scan him. He is one of my favorite artists,
Of course.
but I try not to take from that
Right.
if possible.
Yeah, your style is very different from Greg's. I mean, I see a little bit,
Yeah,
more recently you posted that Copic marker sketch of that Batman headshot.
yeah, yeah.
And I saw a little bit of Greg in that, and I
Mhm,
think honestly that might have been the first time in the years that I've followed you and your original art that I saw some of Greg.
mhm,
Because most of the time when I see like your Batman stuff, it's very different. Like I remember
yeah,
you did another one where, you know, in terms of composition, like his head was a little bit thinner. You had like the
mhm.
longer ears.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
A little bit
it's
wacky one, I
definitely
think. Yeah.
interesting to see that. And would it be going out too far out on a limb? I feel like I see a little bit of Bilson Cabbage in your art.
That's funny. I, you know, I don't ever claim to. It's very. I love his work, man, but I think I like his personality.
Yeah.
I love his work, but it's funny that you bring him up because I'd been struggling with my own personal art for quite a long time, and it actually started, the better I got at inking when I got into the industry, because the better I got, the more I wanted to learn and improve. I sat drawing to the side
Mm,
because I needed to put everything into inking.
right.
So by doing that, to my own fault, I didn't draw as much as I should have. So then it's not like I forgot how to draw, I forgot how to be confident and not be so tight about drawing.
Right.
And so then I felt like I had to fit in to this comic box. I had to draw 4 inks. I had to draw the way I perceived that guys in comics would draw, because I'm inking over people.
Right.
So I'm thinking like, I got to draw it like this, or but it was until like recently I was watching, those like YouTube short clips Bilson Cabbage does, like the
Yeah.
videos. He mentioned something that was pretty profound to me, and it was about style. That he felt like he didn't have a style. I believe he said.
That's
I think
fair.
that's what it was. He fought with that or something like that. But then, he realized that, he could be whatever. Um, so recently, I kind of let go of that whole trying to fit into, any particular box or whatever. And I think that's why, like, when I do draw, especially from those commissions that you have up back there to now,
Hmm.
there's a shift. There's always some type of, one might be very different than the other.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just me, like, constantly searching, maybe hit on something.
Yeah.
But, you know, Sienkiewicz has a lot of like amazing things that he does that I don't know if I could pull anything from it. But that's definitely an influence. Sean Gord Murphy for his he's got like a beastly way he handles environments.
Yeah, he's really I love how line heavy his artwork is.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's I have an original Tokyo Ghost page,
Mm.
and some of the lines are so they're so light that I would think you can only appreciate them if you have the original. So it's almost like, I don't know if he does something maybe when he Photoshop he kind of when he's probably darkens areas whatever. He's just like creating art. Um, uh, so yeah, Sean for his environments and stuff like that. Um, Matteo Celera, um,
Yeah.
I'm like addicted. That dude, I looked at his every year. I go to his table in New York, and I look through his portfolio, and I always look at the earlier stuff. And I don't know if you ever looked at like his earlier work to now.
Hmm.
It's just crazy progression to me. Um, so it's cool to see where he is now. I love his stuff. Dan Panosian is like phenomenal, and
Hmm.
this was an inker,
Well,
but
it's interesting too because you look at some of the biggest names in comic books, and a lot of them started out as inkers. You
yeah.
get like the Dick Giordano's,
Hmm.
you get like obviously Jimmy Palmiotti, who ended up becoming a huge figurehead for Marvel Knights.
Yeah.
Both started out as anchors. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this from New York. I think I brought it up to you. The day I had purchased all three of those, I was walking around the con, like getting signatures, and I had seen Tomasi, and he was like, "Oh, who did you get those from?" And I was like, "Oh, John Glapion." And he
Hmm.
was like, "Man, I'm gonna have to go talk to him." So I was like, I hope that happens, man, because
Yeah.
I don't I don't know if you'd be willing, but I personally would love to see a book with your internals, like with your art style.
I don't know about that one, but I wouldn't mind, getting to a point of enough confidence and enough, where I feel comfortable doing covers, things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know about like, I don't know if I'm built for like the monthly type thing.
Mhm.
You know, pencilers are, um, they get a lot of credit, but probably not enough credit
Yeah.
for being able to be on all the time.
Right.
You think about, sometimes people are looking for inspiration before they can. It's like, I gotta be inspired to draw. It's like, you get a deadline and a script, you gotta be whatever. So, but yeah, covers, stuff like that, and I think that would be more my speed.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, it's a pretty cool compliment to hear that somebody would want to see anything like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, honestly, like these headshots, like those could all be comic covers in my opinion, in and of
Yeah,
themselves, you know? Like like with that whole Year of the Villain thing, if they had said, you know, Jonathan Glapion doing a Two-Face or a Scarecrow or Mr. Freeze or pretty much anything, they'd be like, all right, like I'll take 12. Like let's go.
Awesome.
So I really hope, you know, and I don't know if you're interested, I hope to see, you know, more of your style being published on comics because I think it's really unique. And I think that aesthetically it's really appealing and you can see the amount of detail and the amount of technical skill that it takes to do what you do, you know, like, and it's hard because I wish I could just pull those out of the frame
Yeah.
and just show people. But like I was saying earlier with the Mr. Freeze, you can see the metallic texture in the base, or in Harvey's face, you can see like all the skin rips and the little hairs that are kind of
Yeah.
oddly off. It's so cool because for me, I think going into comics for a long time, I was very much the type that was really into like house style comic books. And you know,
Mhm.
a lot of people go into comics really only wanting like the Jim Lees or the Tony Day
Right.
or the David Finches. But like then you get something like your artwork
Mhm.
and it like you can see where this is comic book art, but at the same time you are applying that more externally artistic
Yeah.
vision to these
Yeah.
characters. And I think it's super unique. So one of these days I'm hoping I can catch your website before New York Comic Con this year and figure out a commission because I would love to get the original piece, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I get, I think I have 3 more to do. God, I've had them forever too. And the reason I did me and my wife set up the commissions the way we did. It was her idea because it's just something about like when I'm working, I don't want the pressure of, it sounds bad, of doing what you want me to do.
Right. No,
So
it
I
makes
have to
sense.
have some kind of say in it. So that's why you have the 3. You give me 3 things that you want, and then I get to pick one, like the little lottery or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then hopefully you're pleasantly surprised because one of those are, you know, you pick 3 of them, but I got the final say.
Yeah.
Um, but I forgot where I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so hopefully we'll open up some more slots. I have like 3 more commissions to finish. I have another big commission to finish, which is an inking commission, which I don't take those anymore.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're piled from work with DC, man. You turn around like you're doing last night, and then haven't you been regularly inking over Bogdanovic for
Yeah, well, yeah, I only do like 5 pages
mm,
of that stuff though. I do 5 pages just to kind of like fill in any gaps or whatever. There's times where I really shouldn't be taking them,
yeah,
but then I am not saying no, and um, I've turned down a few things this year because I wanted to focus on the last night stuff.
right.
Um,
I mean, it's showing, man. Like your focus on that book is incredible.
yeah, it's long hours.
It it
Yeah.
shows. Like I don't know, you know, if you ever get a chance to watch my review, honestly, like your inks were one of the things, and we actually just got somebody in the chat, Comic Boom, who says his work on last night is great. But yeah, like that was one of the biggest things I focused on because again, I've had the experience of seeing Greg's pencils kind of laid bare without inks or anything, and then just realizing, you know, what your inks are doing on top of his pencils. Because obviously Greg's great, right? Like he's one of the
Yeah,
best pencilers in the industry.
right.
But seeing what your inks add to it, and especially in this book, is nuts. Like the
Yeah, I always like, I remember when I was starting out inking, I always felt like inking is kind of like it's like a signature, like the extension of how you sign something or whatever. So hopefully you recognize that that's my signature
Mhm.
without it dominating the penciler to the degree that you don't recognize the penciler.
Right.
That's why I think like inks get weird when it's so heavily influenced by the inker
Mhm.
that you don't know who penciled it.
Yeah.
I think that's like kind of like a no for me.
Yeah.
Um, so like with with Greg's stuff, it's everything's just so nuanced, and I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about now.
Uh, no,
But
I mean, and it's awesome too to see that you have such a good relationship with Greg, where he can kind of just, mark his areas and let you kind of go and do what you do, which
well, I mean, he's not, he everything's there, man. Like Greg does not. That dude is not at home relaxing. That's for sure. He's very. He's very. He doesn't let things go. Like I've seen him. I've seen him like have a page completely done, sent in, the JPEG sent to everybody,
Mhm.
and then maybe an hour or 2 hours later, there's a modification. But then the modification, I'm not even kidding you, is so slight I can't find it. Like I'm like, what did he do? And it's like he tilted the head just like that a little bit. So, that when you work with somebody like that, it makes it, you have to have that same kind of um, level of intensity, I guess, level of like care.
Yeah.
And it's not to say like, there's times where something is like, oh shit, and Greg will catch it and he'll say, hey, you missed this line or whatever, or that's a double, that shouldn't be a double line.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, I got it. So that stuff is collaborating. That stuff is just, um, figuring out what's being interpreted or whatever.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful part about comics is that it's probably one of the most collaborative storytelling mediums out there, Like
Yeah.
one of the things that I particularly like to look at is the way that you can see how the writer and the art team make their collaboration to accomplish, not only the story, but the visual narrative and just the aesthetic of the book and how
Mhm.
that kind of also pushes tonality, like
Yeah.
it's very specific. And I think that one of the strengths that I've seen is you can very clearly tell that the entire team on last night, like you guys are all very familiar with each other.
Mhm.
And I think that you can tell that all of you are just gunning at the highest quality that you possibly can. And it
Yeah.
definitely shows in last night in particular, because did FCO also color for you guys on Court of Owls? Because
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. So, it's funny. I've worked on so many books. This might get me in trouble with colors. I worked on so many books throughout the years, and you know, you can be whatever kind of badass inker you want to be.
Mhm.
If the colors buries your line work, your rendering, if you're not looking at the black and white, you're not seeing it.
Right.
And that's the thing. I've had conversations with people. Me and Greg have talked about it before. What is special about FCO other than like his color palette, his choices,
Yeah.
is the fact that he gets like if so for example if Greg has shadow and he's rendering out of that shadow into the light, he may throw some lines in there, and then if I go in and model that the way I do,
Mhm.
where you have that transition, but then let's say FCO or the colorist comes in and does like this dark shadow
Mhm.
over that, totally unnecessary, but it kills what Greg intended and what I did,
Yeah.
because then you just have dark.
Mhm.
Like we didn't need you to tell that this was a transition from, there's other ways to do that in color choices or whatever, how you render. And FCO is really good at simplifying things in the right areas.
Mm.
Um, because he still has a very painterly mentality
Yeah.
to the way he colors things. the way colors bleed into each other.
Uh-huh.
Like I notice all of that stuff. And it's like, oh wow, it's very painterly, but it's painterly without him having to be so heavy-handed.
Mm.
Like he gets the line work. So
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, it's honestly great seeing an art team like you, Greg, and FCO really knowing each other and knowing how to mesh well.
mhm.
Like obviously, the New 52 Batman is one of the best Batman runs of all time, from story to character to
Right.
the artwork. And it's really great, especially, I've found obviously myself as I get more and more into comics and my time spent reading comics has grown. I'm starting to be able to acknowledge and understand the different components
Mhm.
of it, because I think it's really easy for newcomers to comics and even older fans to just go, we have the writer and the penciler, and
Yeah,
that's
it's easy to gloss over, especially when I don't mean to cut you off, but
no,
it
no.
doesn't help. It doesn't help, and I'll throw shade at the whoever the public is or whatever, but it doesn't help when they promote penciler inker.
Right,
I mean, not penciler, writer penciler.
right.
It doesn't help when you only see those two names attached to, we know what a writer is. But then when you say this is the artist, but then it's like, wait, but then there's the inker and the colorist. So then what are they? Like,
Mhm.
are they production people, or,
Right.
if you don't know, then you don't know what that is.
Mhm.
Um, I understand giving credit where credit is due, but I don't understand. I think if you talk to enough fans, what the fans really appreciate is the team.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
um,
And it's 100% important because I one of the things that I love about getting the chance to sit down and talk to you is providing the unique insight that an inker has in the collaboration that is a comic, because particularly, I've talked a lot about the way you texture things, and that's one very important task, because you had also said earlier that there are things that you can do with brushes and all these other different tools that a penciler really can't render with just
right,
pencils.
right,
And I don't think a lot of people really understand that and give the inker the credit that's deserved in that regard.
right. I mean, it's a weird, it's kind of a weird craft, because it's, for as disrespected as colorists have historically kind of been, like
Mhm.
names being left off the credits on the covers and things like that, just weird choices like that. To now, I feel like people will skip right over the inker and go straight to the colorist. So it's like we're not even a part of the band anymore. It's like, what's going on? So luckily, there are venues like Twitter, Instagram, and the thing that I love seeing are you know it almost feels like there's this moment where there are some inkers that are kind of trying to educate people.
Yeah.
Like Sandra Hope is one of them it's on Twitter, and her videos are really cool. Like
Mhm.
go look at her videos, because you can see the care that she puts into her work. And you're seeing it real time, and she'll explain things. So some of that, like we need a lot of that. But mostly we just need to be included. Like
And value.
when I when I first picked up comics, it was from a different perspective. I didn't read them,
Mhm.
so what did I care about?
The
The
art.
art. So I only cared about the person who drew it, and then I was curious about, okay, what's the ink? The inks. This guy inks really good, but this guy makes this guy look weird.
Mhm.
The colors are cool here. This is a cool. So my introduction was introduction to a team in comics was Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair.
Absolutely.
you
And
know,
and what's crazy is, I would venture to say, as a whole, those three are probably the most well known in the comic book community,
For
just
good reason.
individually as their roles. Because, you go to conventions and getting a Scott Williams commission is like digging for gold in concrete,
Well,
because that guy's so booked.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that Jim Lee's art has gotten a ridiculous amount of exposure, and some people begin to look into it. I mean, naturally, Scott Williams and why am I Colorist? I'm losing it.
Alex Sinclair.
And Alex Sinclair, they put just as much into Jim Lee's art as Jim Lee does, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
So and so, like, moving forward, we talked a little bit about just understanding the roles. For you as an inker, how would you describe your responsibility in the making of a comic book to, like, the layman or the new fan?
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's kind of the part. Don't suck. That's the easiest. How would I describe it? I might describe it a little differently, less technical. My God, your responsibilities are kind of different with different people, though.
Right.
Like, there's not to sound like there's some people that need a little bit of help.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? With the inks, in terms of, you better have an inker that can draw some kind of help. There's been those situations. Greg doesn't need any help drawing.
Yeah.
If there's some messed up product that's drawing related, I probably messed up somewhere. It's probably not Greg. So my responsibility with Greg, to me, is to embellish. It's to embellish into God.
Texture.
Yeah, which texture things, embellish, it's the same, I guess. This is weird, to not lose Greg.
No,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
My responsibility to Greg's pencils, if you love Greg's pencils, you should be able to see through my inks. Oh, yeah, that's definitely Greg.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird to say, but I've seen inkers so overpower pencilers. That it's, and by what I mean is, say you have a guy that's inking I never want to be the guy that is inking 3 different people, but I'm making them all look like the same penciler.
Right.
So I've always kind of shifted. It's funny, people knock Victor Bogdanovich for drawing like Greg. And I see the influence, but, and this is not a knock to Victor, Greg is so refined that I don't see it as much as I think other people see it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because I'm looking at Greg's pages.
Well, I think that's almost one of Victor's strengths, really, because as a fan, that's what pulled me in. I remember the first project I had seen him on was like one of those Arkham video game kind of adaptations. And I was like, man, this guy looks like Greg Capullo. And that's kind of what drew me in. Like, I didn't really knock him for it, because I think some of the best pencilers in comics kind of started with a heavy influence from someone else and made it their own way. I mean, you look at like a Jason Fabok, for example, who at this point is really only doing big, high-scale projects with like the Jeff Johnses and the Tom Kings and whatnot. But he I mean, and I've had the opportunity to sit down and chat with him. He straight up said to me, in no uncertain words, that he used to ape off of David Finch. And you can see the influence of David Finch, but you can also see where his style has kind of just veered in its own direction.
Yeah. And that's what you should do,
Yeah.
But, with my point to the Victor and Greg thing is, like, as much as Victor may be influenced by Greg, I don't necessarily try to ink Victor like I ink Greg.
Right.
There may be some things there in the inks, but there's a different handling. I'm not trying to cheat him,
Right.
um, but it's I don't like to ink everybody the same
No, it makes sense.
way.
I feel like, and I don't know if this is an apt analogy, but from what I'm interpreting from what you're saying, it sounds like almost like the penciler is the guitarist and the inker's kind of the amplifier.
Right.
Like you really want to bring out the
Right.
best qualities in the pencils. And obviously, like you were saying, it's certainly important for an inker to kind of leave their signature, right? Like I think for you, it might be the way that you texture things. It's
Mhm.
very particular because Greg's style is kind of a mixture of what people would be considered like the house comic book style and a little bit of a more like blocked yeah, kind of like a blocked impactful style as well. And then with your inks you almost provide, especially in Last Night, an element of realism to something that is very heavily like a comic book style.
Yeah.
And while you are accenting the stuff that Greg does, and I think in particular bringing up, for example, the way he does Batman's cowl,
Mhm.
that kind of big bad Frank Miller
Yeah.
bull helmet. But
Mhm.
then on the other end, like for example, spoilers, there's a panel in here when Bruce pulls up the umbrella from the corpse
Yeah.
body, and you see Bruce's reaction, and the way that you fade from like that darkness kind of under his chin up onto his face has a very realistic quality to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to. There's definitely there's. I posted a video. It's been up there for years when we were working on Court of Owls, and it's the where Batman's on the motorcycle
Mhm.
chasing the helicopter on the train tracks.
Yeah, I have was it issue 2, that cover right
Yeah.
back there.
Yeah. 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 I think it might have been in that one. Yeah.
Yep.
And I explain in inking the why certain things I'm using dry brush,
Mhm.
and then if there's another element next to it, if there's another surface next to it, I'm not going to do the same technique on that, because then it just all fades into each other. So I'm always interested in sort of things that are real, but Greg doesn't draw realistic.
Right.
So then you don't want to try to make things necessarily, but you have elements where that's wood,
Right.
but
Mhm.
I'm not going to ink, something right next to it where it's confusing. Like, wait, but that's a helicopter. Is a helicopter made out of wood? Like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into wanting to do stuff like that. I think you have to want to explore all these different textures and what they can do for storytelling, as
Yeah.
much the penciler telling the story. All of those little things matter. There's always like Sean Gordon Murphy does this really well with things not being solid black, but they're in shadow.
Yep.
But you still get hints of light seeping through, so
Right.
you see, and it feels like that surface is really there.
Yeah.
It's not so cookie cutter.
Yes.
So that's the kind of stuff that I like to kind of explore.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really something that seems to be unique to this era in comics, because you go through and you read, and mind you, like some of the best artists in comics, even in some of the best artistic creative teams, you see very similar textures from like the character suit to like the wall behind them. It's a wall just kind of by like the shape. And then on
Right.
smaller panels, it can become kind of difficult to see. But one of the things I love about your inks are you pay a lot of attention to the texture so that, you know, under the context of the panel, even though, for example, if we have a small panel on the screen and we're not going to get like a wide shot, we still know what's around the character.
Right. I mean, that kind of stuff comes from a bit of what I hate to see personally. Like, there's there's plenty of like, and it's not like I'm not trying to like dog anybody, but there's guys like, okay, so when Greg draws his backgrounds and his
Mhm.
cities and the buildings,
Mhm.
they have just as much character as the people.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
At
But
at
then there's
at least
that.
I feel like if the right artists are working on it. You know, I think it takes a very particular set of artists to accomplish that, and all compliments to you, Greg, and FCO, because I think that's one of the great qualities about your collaboration is that and sorry for interrupting you, but I feel like I needed to say this, is that Gotham, particularly in your Batman run, felt like its own character. And
Right.
particularly with how iconic Gotham is, I feel like that is so important.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad that that was something that the 3 of you were able to accomplish. So big
Yeah,
kudos on that.
you know, but then there's guys that then I've worked on stuff where, you know, buildings look like boxes.
Yep.
And for me, there's an immediate disconnect.
Mhm.
And it's like I get it. I know this is a comic book, but shouldn't a building not look like a cardboard box? At
Agreed.
least, you know. And it just feels like, you know, I cared about this, but then that stuff I didn't really care much about. And
Right.
then, you know, um, I'm not, you know, it's that's the thing that, you know, the funny thing that I say about Greg's work for me is I always joke around and I call Greg the Norman Rockwell of pencilers. And
Yep.
by that, I mean, if you pay attention, if you've looked at enough Norman Rockwell stuff, it's always the characters in the background who are supposed to be not important
Mhm.
that are the most interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Like all those secondary actors in the background that are around the scene. I can honestly say I don't know anybody who's nailing that stuff like Greg.
I
Nobody.
I agree, particularly in what you guys were doing with Reborn. I
Mhm.
remember that first issue in particular, and spoilers for a story that's like 3 years old now, when, I think it was Bonnie's husband getting shot,
Mhm.
and
Oh yeah.
you see the reaction from the crowd, and, like, obviously, you know, you wanna go to where, like, the sniper line is, but, like, you're looking at, like, the secondary cast
Yep.
around him, and that was just as captivating as watching a guy get sniped off of a roof.
Yep. Yep. So I mean, so you know, when I'm working on that stuff all the time, and if that stuff is so important, then to me, like it just says every aspect of the page is important.
Absolutely.
The trash on the curb and on the corner, it should have character to it. The
Mhm.
street lamp should have character to it, you know. Um, and it's not to say, you know, you're getting, you know, all caught up in the detail, but you know, you kind of are.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, it's, you know, I just have a problem with like building blocks in the background. It's
Well,
just weird.
I think that that is to your benefit that you have an eye like that, and I think that it's work like that that elevates comics to, you know, more of a higher art version of storytelling because we've seen, you know, the big heralded greats, you know, like the Watchmens and the Dark Knight Returns and what's something that books like the and like the Killing Joke, what's something that those books all have in common? As great and phenomenal as the writing is, the visual art is not only aesthetically appealing, but has such a high concept of visual narrative and
Mhm.
tone in those visuals that pushes the overall storytelling to another level.
Right.
In comics, I think need more people like you with that eye for trying to provide and almost like rationalize environments, you
Mhm.
know? Because it's like I feel like the medium is limitless, right? Like you can essentially craft a film for a significantly smaller budget in a
Yeah.
comic.
Right.
And I feel like that's what the best comic books do, you know?
Yeah. I just, you know, when one of the things that I learned coming in and learning how to ink was one of the things that was drilled into my head by chance was it should look better on the original than anything else. Don't depend on the printing, don't depend on the colorist. The black and white image should stand alone. So
Yep.
for me, you know, it's every page. I know FCO is amazing,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not thinking about FCO when I'm inking.
Right.
I know FCO is going to do what he does, and for me, I love when he kicks back the pages because I get to see the final thing that I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
Oh wow, that's really cool. And for me, it's like, oh, this is like candy. But for me, it is about the craftsmanship. It is about seeing how far I can do something that maybe somebody else can't do. That was the whole point of looking at all that original art from who I thought were the best inkers in the industry. That's the payoff in a way, that you take the time to care. Some people don't. Some people, I think we froze. Yeah, I don't know if you can see me, but you're frozen for me. Oh,
See
there you
you?
go.
I can.
We're breaking up a little bit. Let me see if I can get off my Wi-Fi. Yeah, you're frozen.
There you go. Awesome.
Okay. I think we're kind of, maybe not. Yeah, I still don't have you. I don't know if you guys can hear me or. All right. You there? Broke it.
Right.
All right, I got you now.
You got me? You can hear me?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Awesome. I don't know where that was coming from. Okay, so it said that I could hear you but not me for a minute. That's weird. Gotta love Google.
Could you
But
not
one of
hear
the I
me?
guess the visuals went away at first, and I could hear you, and I was responding to you.
Yeah.
But
Oh
then
yeah, then I
eventually,
could. Yeah, they're still kind of jacked up right now. Yeah. I think we lost each other again.
but what I was
Okay, there you go. I hear you a little, but I don't see you. You broke up again. There we go.
all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I don't know what the heck's going on. It doesn't say anything about my connection.
It, it could be mine. I mean, I don't know. I have full. Hmm.
Being bad. So
Yeah, I don't know. It could be on my end. I don't
can
have anything streaming, so I don't know.
yeah. Um, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's just the video's not very good, so the signal's probably weak.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah,
I turned down my video quality a little bit, hoping that it would be like easier on the connection.
Oh, I could turn mine down too then probably, huh?
Yeah, from the little, there's like a little service bar. You
Yeah.
can click that
Let me
and
see if I
adjust.
can. Wait, that's low. Okay. Let's see if that works
Okay.
so far. Maybe. No. Okay. You froze again. Let me see if I can turn it on again.
So you can hear me? Everything's fluid? Oh boy. I can hear you all right.
Yeah, you probably hear my kids in the background too.
I can hear you all right. I guess we could get towards the closing. It doesn't seem like the connection's doing us any good.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to say is just that it seems like your grasp on art outside of comic books has a very positive effect on what you're doing on the comic book page. So it's just awesome to see.
I like all kinds of things, man. I like, fashion design, everything. I try not to limit myself.
No, man, and it proves itself on the page, man, because your style is so distinct and unique. And if you're ever wondering if you're
I lost you.
doing what you should, oh boy.
Oh,
hear me
I get you. Yeah.
But yeah, point being, man, is what you do over pencils and particularly your collaboration with Greg is very, very special. So
Awesome.
your name alone is something for me to indicate that I need to pick up a book.
Cool. That's very, very nice of you to say.
Of course.
I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Your art shows. I did before Google decides to kick us in the ass again. We did have a couple of questions from the live chat that I did want to field. One of the questions was from AJ's Comics, and he was wondering how long it takes on average to ink a page for you.
On average, it could be anywhere from, depending on what's on the page, it could be anywhere from 5 hours to let's say 13 hours. There's I can't tell you that page. That's issue 2. There's a page and there's a double page spread in issue 2 that took forever. It took days. I think you might have lost me. I don't know if you can hear me. I lost you. Okay. I got you back now.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yeah. I don't know if you heard the last part where I said some pages can take a matter of days, like double page spread. It can span over, for example, in Reborn, the double page spread with a huge tree, like, I worked on that, I think, for 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was insane.
Well, I mean, it shows, man. The detail's all there.
It was insane. So it's, something like that.
All right. And let's see. Some Moki dude, I feel like I might know the answer to this question. But favorite writer and or artist that you've worked on?
That's easy. Scott and Greg.
It shows, man. Your stuff, man, when you guys get together, it's a book like none other.
Yeah, Scott's amazing. He's so thoughtful too.
Dude, he's such a good guy. Just meeting him, and it's really redeeming because I have met some creators in comics that just weren't very personable people. And you meet guys like you, Scott, and Greg, frankly, that are all like top tier talent, but also incredibly nice people. And you guys are.
Scott remembers everybody. I've done signings with him, and he remembers people's names. And he's like, "Didn't I see you at that show last year?" And your name is blah blah. Like, wow, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, it was especially for me because I remember the first year I went to New York Comic Con, I think I saw Scott like 3 times. And he was like, the year after, he was like, "Oh, like you came to me a couple times last year," because I think like the 4th time I saw him, I just went up to say thank you because I was like, I don't want to waste time for you signing, but I did want to use the time to say thank you. I love your work, this, that, and the other thing. And he remembered me last year again. And I think you guys generally do because I'm like, "Hey, look, Court of the Owls tattoo." Which works to my advantage. But yeah, you guys are so personable. But it's truly a great thing when you find creators who are both talented and great people.
I agree. When I first went to some show like San Diego Comic-Con, I met some, I won't say names, but they were not cool with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, I'll never forget you.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, sometimes, and I know that you guys don't consider this when you're just being good people, but it also, I think, affects just the amount of people that want to experience your artwork, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you meet someone nice and you're like, man, like I want to see what they're up to. And,
Yeah.
you know, it just so happens that like in the case for you guys, like you guys are superstar talents as well. So it works.
Well, I mean, you know, we're appreciative that we have any followers, really. You know, it's pretty humbling, you know, to go to a show and see people waiting in line, you know, to chat or get a signature or whatever. I don't take any of that stuff for granted, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You could be out of luck, you know, a week from now. Who knows? You know, you could be out of flavor. You don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see. Another question from Comic Boom. He said, what current artist would Glapion want to ink that he hasn't yet?
Ink that I haven't yet? Jerome Pena.
Oh, that would be crazy to see.
Yeah. I actually inked Jerome once. I inked Jerome. My daughter, our oldest daughter, Sophie, gave Jerome a sketch cover because Jerome's art rep, Quan, wanted to get Jerome to do a Batman for him. So he convinced Sophie to go ask Jerome for a Batman. But at the time, she was into My Little Pony. So she forgot about Batman. And she asked him to draw My Little Pony on a sketch cover. So Jerome doesn't do commissions. He doesn't do sketch covers and any of that stuff. So for no amount of money, Jerome was not taking commissions. And so she takes it to him. And Quan's like, I cannot believe your daughter asked for a My Little Pony and not a Batman. I'll fix it. I'll fix this. So I suggested that Jerome put Batman riding My Little Pony.
No way.
And she got it. And I inked it. And we got it graded.
Do you have a photo of that?
I wish I had it. See if I can find a photo. I don't remember where the book is. It's put away.
Man,
but I'll try to tweet it out.
It's
it's funny because Sophie was into My Little Ponies and farting, and she'd been talking to Quan about farting all day. So Batman's riding a My Little Pony, and the pony is farting.
I feel like it's crazy enough to get that the experience of a cover by Jerome Pena, and then you get that by Jerome Pena with your inks.
Yeah, my kids they love Jerome. They call him Jimmy the Cricket.
That's hilarious.
I don't know why they call him Jimmy the Cricket, but they call him Jimmy the Cricket.
That's what icons are made of, man. That's so nuts.
Yeah, so nuts. Do too. So
yeah, definitely. Man, I would love to see that. If you did that, I would retweet the shit out of that.
Keep that photo up. I'll have to find that.
I know awesome. Let's see. Another question we got from Comic Boom. As the inker, do you also get to read the script? Can I assume that knowing the intent of a particular scene is important since you're inking over the pencils and such knowledge might impact your inks?
Yeah, I get the script. There's a lot of times I don't, depending on the project. I typically get them working with Greg and Scott. There's been times where I didn't get it, and I'll just ask for it, say, hey, I didn't get the script, and I get it. There's a lot of stuff that I don't really need to read. More FCO does for knowing time of day and things like that.
And lighting and stuff.
Yeah, lighting. And for me, Greg indicates everything. There might be certain things. There have been certain things that I want to read to figure out. Maybe I can't think of an example, but like certain wanting to know with like, is this smoke or is this a cloud? Like what, what's going on in the scene? Just to get an idea what's going on there. But typically, I can work without it. But it can be very helpful to have it.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I like again, I think that the perfect example of that collaborative process is in last night for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't want to take up too much of your time because I feel like I could sit here and talk to you for.
If you have any, since we were breaking up, whatever, if there's other questions, I can, as long as we have a connection, I can. It seems like it's working.
Yeah,
Turn down
it's
thing.
it seems pretty all right.
Yeah.
But so for you, is there anything by way of like a project or, I mean, we you said you wanted to work with Jerome Opinion, but is there a particular type of project you'd like to see yourself on in the future?
Um,
Like maybe because I know we had mentioned, even going into covers and doing your
yeah.
own art.
I think right now, the honest answer I can give is I am in pursuit of. Greg is like 103, I think, years old. So at some point, and since I'm only 19, Greg is probably gonna retire. No, Greg's never retiring. No, I think right now I'm just in a place where we're not doing the monthly grind. As long as Greg wants us all working together, then that I do. It doesn't really, for me, it doesn't matter what we work on. Like I've said on panels before, I don't care if if Scott wants to do the Smurfs. I don't, I know it'll be cool looking art, so
Yeah,
I'll do that.
that's
Um,
for sure.
so the other part of it is just like I just want to keep exploring my personal art and pushing myself in that direction, not necessarily leaving what I do with these guys,
Yeah,
but you know, realistically, I have to at some point be more uh, self-reliant, I guess.
hmm
Because when you're an inker, you're dependent on somebody, and
hmm
that's the reality. You're dependent on that penciler working or that penciler wanting to work with you.
hmm
I don't, I've been doing this long enough. I don't want to be in the position of if this guy doesn't want to work with me anymore, I'm in a corner crying, trying
Yeah,
to figure out how I'm gonna, you know, keep a roof over my family's head.
yeah.
So that's all stuff that, that I have to put in the work to do. And that's why I tell, people, don't buy into the whole inker title, don't forget to be artist,
Yeah.
because you'll starve yourself out.
No, I think that's such a valuable piece of advice, especially for, the potential young inkers out there
Mhm.
looking, for said advice, man, because you are at the top of the top, man, in terms of versatility, your ability to do what you do on a comic book page, but also outside of it in your own art. And it translates for sure, like I can see techniques and qualities of your inks that are also in your original art and vice versa.
Yeah, hopefully, I think that's the payoff for, you know, inking for so long and caring about what you're doing. Um, so, when I draw something, my weakest point isn't my inks.
Right.
Like, I don't feel like I'm ruining the piece by my inks. I've
Mhm.
had a lot of people bring me their portfolios who can draw pretty good, but then they ink themselves terribly.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell them, you gotta commit to one or the other until you figure out how to, fake it till you make it or whatever. But you got to refine one or the other. It's very hard to do them both at the same time. That's a rare thing.
Yeah.
So
No, it like I said, it shows, and that's distinctly unique, I think, about what you're able to do on the page. So that's a big thing I think to have under your belt. Koala One says, I just got here, so sorry if it's been asked, but would you ever try penciling? So I guess elaborating on that, if DC came up to you right now and said, we need a cover, would you be up for doing that?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, DC.
Well, you know what? If DC came up to me, I'm smart enough. I will say this: if DC came up to me and said, "Hey, we need a cover, but we need it tomorrow," I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
It would crush me to say no, but the smart move would be to not give them the shittiest version of me.
Right. No,
And try to get it later. I can't do it for you that quick. It's always best when you're young, man, and you're starting out. You're afraid about a lot of things, so you'll lie and you'll like, oh yeah, I'll get it done. I'll get it done. Oh, I can do it. I'll fake it. I can do it. But that never really works out that well to me. For me, I would just rather say, I can't get it to you that quick, man. It would suck, and not to keep blabbing about it, but I had situations like that inking actually at DC. When I first got to DC, there was times where I was asked, can you do this 5 pages in 2 days or 3 days? And the younger me would have done it. The paranoid me would have done that, thinking I gotta prove myself.
Yep.
But hopefully you get older, you get a little bit wiser, and you realize that some things don't benefit you. Right. It might benefit the publisher to have that, the editor to have those pages turned in however they look. But if that's the last thing I turned in and it looks like shit, I don't even remember for that.
Yeah.
So there's been times where I've had to tell them I can't turn those in that fast. It's gonna look like shit, and I just say it exactly like that. It's gonna look like shit. I don't want to do that. And I've actually had an editor tell me, your shit looks better than most, so we'll take it. I can't do that. That can't be true.
I respect that. I respect it a lot that you want to put out quality artwork, and you want to show what you can do, because comics is an industry, especially such that it's periodical. It is in a periodical format to where a lot of guys kind of sully their name by always saying yes.
Yep.
So I think it takes a very particular talent and a very particular mindset to be able to step back. And by now, you've been working for DC for the better part of a decade almost. So I feel like by now you kind of have the credibility to be like, when you say no, they'll kind of understand. Yeah,
I mean, I don't have any. I haven't had any editors that were like, assholes about it. I think it's just like, it depends on how you approach people, like how you respond to people. I haven't really had any. I've had good experiences at DC, so I can't really say anything bad about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad they treat you well, man, because you keep churning out top tier artwork.
They can treat me better. They can pay me more.
Well, let's make it better. And you know what, man? If I have to be the one to campaign for some Jonathan Glapion original covers, I will. 100%. I'll take those prints with me next time I go to New York, and just by chance kind of slip them to like editors and creators and be like, hey, you know what the fans want? We want this. So.
Yeah, I look at it as, for me, I kind of look at it as, I'll know when I get there, when they notice it. I know, so I look at it as I have more work to do. So
well, if it makes any better, as one of the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people that spend their money on comic books, I would love to see your original art in comics, and I would pay for it 12 times over.
Awesome.
I guess one final question before we wrap up from Comic Boom. What do you feel like your best work to date is? What are you most proud of so far?
Most proud of it was probably I would say this Last Night stuff.
It's so good.
It's very, very close between that and Reborn. So,
Yeah.
yep.
I
And
mean,
I think a lot of people might expect me to say Court of Owls, but I think I've gotten better since Court of Owls. And Court of Owls was a different thing too. It was a different beast because I wasn't inking over Greg's pencils. I don't know if a lot of people know the difference, but I was inking over the blue lines, which I get the scan of the pencils and then I print that out. And with Greg, there's a lot of little nuanced things that can get lost if you don't print that stuff out well.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't have a professional printer. I had your standard, what everybody has to print, inkjet printer.
Mm-hmm.
And now I could do it like amazingly because I have professional printers.
Oh yeah. Your artist prints?
Yeah. We do all of our own printing.
Incredible quality on this print of I think it's Batman number 9, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You can see your strokes.
Yeah.
In there.
That's deliberately printed that way because I wanted the artist editions to look like what I see. And to me, and it's what I see on the original. So I think that's cool to look at.
They're phenomenal. I mean, I get people asking all the time if that's like the actual page. And I mean, obviously here's me wishing I had the money to shell out for that page, but God,
funny quick story. Scott and Greg were at a show, I want to say in Cleveland, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And someone brought them a print, an artist edition print, and they hadn't seen one before. And it had the wax seal on it. And they were like, they thought it was the original that had a wax seal on it. And they were like, what's going on with this wax seal? So, but no, explain to him. And I think my wife said David Finch was fooled by one as well.
I mean, they're astounding, man. Like your artist print. I have, let's see, this guy, I think from 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, that's an awesome one. Yeah, we did the limited editions of those.
No, dude, these were sick.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the stuff that I've gotten from you at New York are freaking astounding, man.
Yeah, I couldn't tolerate getting prints done from anywhere else, so we spent the money, invested on the printers, and got to do it ourselves. My wife does them, actually.
The quality pays off, and a quick shout out to your wife too for just communicating with me and setting this up, man. Such a sweet woman, and even just meeting her at your tables at cons. Shout out to her, man.
Yep,
awesome.
She runs the show.
Yeah. But and just in closing, I hope that more comic book fans begin to realize what you're putting in and what you're adding, as an inker to these books, because especially, with Last Night, man, you are, and again, I want you to know like how genuine this is. I don't think I've ever seen better inks in my life than what I'm seeing in Last Night. It is so evocative what you're doing in this book, and especially, one of the things that I want to bring up is the scene with Bruce and Alfred in the Arkham Bell Tower. And and just and like in the beginning too, when Bruce is in the rain, and just the way that you're using the inks to really set the tone of what's going on. And like, not gonna lie, like I think I read this because I got mine at like a midnight release, and I read it at like 3 a.m, and I was just looking at the pages with Bruce and Alfred talking towards the end of part 1. And like, I'm a grown man and I almost cried. Like that's how like the writing and how well, the entire art team really put it together. But like the textures that you put on Alfred's face, man, it's astounding.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely jaw-dropping. So I do want to tell anybody that's watching, there are links to both Jonathan's website and his Twitter below. He is an awesome follow. His original art is spectacular. And I know I said this before we went live, but Jonathan's actually the most featured artist in my entire background between those 3, that artist print, that one right there. And then I have, obviously like the graded copies of the first couple issues of Batman. Signed by those 3. But man, I want to thank you so much for just sitting down and talking craft with me, man.
Oh yeah, thanks for Thanks for doing this. I mean, it's cool to talk shop, and that's the only way people are gonna be educated really about
And
what's going on.
I think it's super important. And that's one of the reasons, obviously, just besides being a fan of yours, as to why I was so excited to do this, because the what an inker does is so versatile depending on what artist they're working with, and
Mhm.
what you guys can accomplish and what you have clearly accomplished in your work can be a game changer to comic book art. And again, I did want to give a shout out to your own personal art that you do,
Oh,
because
thanks, man.
it is so cool. And just the way that you texture and detail your artwork is so unique, man. Uh,
Thanks.
and and I hope to continue, just picking up more and more of your stuff, literally until walls are filled.
You're welcome to do that.
But yeah, is so before we close out, is there anything that you want to plug out for the people at home? Let people know what you're working on, where they can find you.
No, just I mean, you gave the links, my website, my Twitter. If any of you guys are on Instagram, I post a lot on Instagram, a lot of pictures. I do usually post a lot of work
Work
in
in
progress.
progress.
Yep. Even I try to sneak them in for the pages for the books that I'm working on, like the last night stuff. I have to be a lot more careful, but usually get some pretty cool close-up textural shots. And um, lately I've been trying to do more video. I did a lot of video for issue 1 of inking last night. I just haven't edited and posted anything really yet. So look for that kind of stuff. Yeah, those are the main 3. I stay off of Facebook. So Instagram, Twitter, and my website. So that's pretty
Yeah,
much.
you guys go check him out, and obviously make sure to go support his artwork. You can get some of his originals and prints via his website, and you can see those on his Twitter, which is actually or on his Twitter and his Instagram, which is what caught
Mhm.
me. But make sure you guys are picking up Last Night, because it's a bi-monthly book. You all have plenty of time to dig into this and just appreciate how good this is, and how literally this book has proven to be the perfect collaboration from all angles of the comics, from writing to colors to pencils to inks, man. You guys are, and I'm gonna like use up my swear of the stream. It is fucking phenomenal.
Awesome. Thank
So I
you.
hope people pick that up, man. And as we close out, I do want to thank everybody for watching and enjoying the conversation. If you did, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you dug it, and hopefully sometime in the future we'll be able to sit down and do something like this again.
Yeah, for sure. Just get a hold of me, or well, get a hold of Tara.
Will do. But yeah, make sure you guys go follow Jonathan on all of his social media. Check out his website because he is awesome. And this is going to be Dark Knight Nation with the one and only ink mastermind Jonathan Glapion signing out for the night.
Thanks, guys.